good evening. This is the December 9th meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:06. I'll entertain public comment. Hearing none. We will move on to the last topic, or the next topic. So one thing we talked about a little bit a couple months ago was after the report out talking about reorganization, voting and designation of new officers. So it has been a year that we've done this. I'm bringing this up, one, because we talked about it originally. I think it is good to make sure we're always putting, the best people in the best positions to help the committee. There's also some selfish reasons. I'm not going to be able to probably devote as much time as a chair going forward for a little while. So I also do want to bring that up. So thoughts on voting new members? Is there, I guess for conversation's sake, I want to talk about it before we do anything.
We still don't know anything about parks, right? No.
I've not heard anything, no.
The Park Commission still has nobody to give us, right? So.
Who's the chair of the Parks Commission, do you know?
Is it Mark Reed? It's Mark, he's the one I ever see.
Well, Paula Mack came to the recent Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee in lieu of or in place of Mark, who couldn't make it.
I mean, I haven't heard anything back. We've brought it up to the administration, town administrator, I think the select board. Yeah. At least two of the members are aware, right? So.
Well, we're still.
Well, there are so many committees with so many vacancies, which is.
I don't know how we manage
some places
to get people out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would help would be to get a sense of where we think we're going from here and how frequently we might need to meet, because I don't have a sense. I mean, I know I'm vice chair, but right now I'm hesitant to jump north to chairman, only because, or offer that, because I've got so many committees. I'm literally on 6 or 7 different committees, and I'm stretched.
You want a life, huh? Is this what you're saying, Chris?
Occasionally, yes. But no, I just find myself, just being pulled in many directions. So I don't know, too, that I would have the time to dedicate as a chairperson. But I don't know, with the presentation on the select board, what we all hope or think is going to happen, I guess. I don't know if that maybe is the first.
So I think one of the big takeaways was a joint meeting needs to happen, right? It's not going to happen till January.
Right.
It needs to involve us, the select board, and the planning board. I think that was the direction, right? There are so many items that touch the planning board.
Yeah.
There are so many items that we may be able to get a better feel for. Do they fit within a short-term or a medium-term, long-term plan?
Did we throw in housing too, though? I don't remember. Was housing part of that joint meeting? Or was it just planning board?
Don't think so, but Housing Authority, we're working on having a meeting with the planning board also.
I mean,
they're going to be heavily intense.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be good to just,
yeah.
It is kind of a...
We wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, I represent housing, but there's two other folks.
Have you approached Paul about a joint
Yes,
meeting?
he's very agreeable.
Okay.
It's just we have to, I feel on the housing side, we need to be more prepared before we, what are we really asking for? So I went to a training on overlay districts, which I got information on. So that's probably the direction we'll lean in. But there's a number of areas we could look at from the planning board as far as trying to help improve the diversity of housing price points in town. How's that sound?
Good.
Is it possible then to bring up the plans that you, or the concerns that you on the housing committee or board want to talk about with the planning board at the same joint meeting? Is that a consideration? Or?
I think that's a great idea, except this could be a very long joint meeting. It might be a series of joint meetings. I don't know what's the best approach. We have all these people together in one room.
There's just
that could be great, but it also could mean, how do you, I think it, in my humble opinion, would have to be organized a certain, what's our agenda, where do we start? how long do we limit the night so that we can pick it up?
Good idea, yeah. So the other thing is that the planning board is working on zoning bylaw review. It's been going on for a couple of years, and the push has been re-accelerated with the consultant. And so as of right now, the usual schedule for the planning board is the first and third Wednesday of the month. And the first is going to be devoted going forward to this bylaw review thing, and the third to other business. Now, we never know what else is going to come up.
Right.
As you know, there was a public hearing last week, there was a public hearing a few weeks ago on zoning changes, and there's just all these other things that come up. Not to say we shouldn't do it, but it's just other things, and I think one of our members is probably not. It's Jim Labrie is apparently having a number of health issues, so we are down to 4 members.
Yeah.
So that's what we've heard. So, just thoughts, but I think it's very important to move forward.
Well, and I wonder, it might be, I mean, you're right, it can be kind of difficult if we have so many people. I mean, if you have the select board and the planning board and housing, I mean, it may be too much. I mean, maybe it is, maybe planning and housing first, and, I mean, you guys do your thing first, and then a bigger meeting, I don't know. I just feel that so many of the issues, that came up during the meeting, we're talking around the planning board, being a central figure, and then housing certainly got thrown in the mix too. So it's kind of hard to divorce it all here.
But do you think, in terms of, efficiency and effectiveness, if we weren't to go, once we meet again together with the select board, this whole notion of a super committee, so that we had representation, or do you think it's important that all the members of each of these committees that should be meeting together? Because that's where I think we're going to get a little bogged down.
I mean, I think
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
I think the super committee is I think it's one of the better routes, just because, you need, to make progress, you need to sometimes cut to the chase on some things, and if you have a room of 30 people,
That's what I'm saying.
it's like the recent Democratic debates, right? There's a room of 20 people, it's like, there's really good information, really good points, but there's still
I'm glad you're watching.
20 people. Everyone needs entertainment on occasion. But, I think if the committees dedicate a resource, someone to do that can go there, speak on their behalf, and kind of try to move things, and then bring back with action items.
But it really has to work, that the person goes back and forth, that they do share the information, that it gets discussed in detail, so that everybody's thoughts and all of that can come back to the committee,
Right.
Efficiently.
I guess I'm almost thinking that for a first meeting, I agree with the idea of the super committee, but I think, in my head anyway, the idea of getting everybody together, just saying, okay, here we all are, we're all, stakeholders in this process. Let's all kind of hear it out, narrow it out a little bit as to how we think we could make this, be a real plan of action, rather than just something that is, again, going to sit on the shelf. I mean,
Then everybody would go back,
Yeah.
and maybe those groups then, using this one person as
Yeah,
a
then-
channel,
then-
would be more
Maybe people go back and select that one person. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
it kind of feels like we ought to have everybody hear all the discussion for a first meeting, and maybe
I
we keep
agree with you.
keep it focused,
Yeah.
but then, then say, okay, but we know this is going to be unwieldy to really manage anything to go forward, so let's narrow it down to this magical super committee, whatever we want to call it, and then take it from there. I mean, I don't know, I just...
No, I do agree with you.
I mean, I think the other thing, right, is initial meeting, you split up the goals by responsibility, right? So if there are a certain number of goals which have a planning board responsibility, then those goals are highlighted, and those are some of the takeaways, right? Like, these are the goals that the committee defined, these are the goals that we want to pursue. Planning board, can you take these back and work them, right? Put them into your process. See how we can make like positive gains on those. I think that's good, right?
I'm in favor of maybe even going forward, having as many planning board members as we could get there, because of a number of reasons. We've got a lot of longevity on the planning board, meaning specifically Paul Demonte's really capable, and
Yeah.
and the other men are engineers, and they bring a whole bunch of value to the fact that they're both engineers. Me, I'm kind of a worker bee person, but I don't think I can fully speak to all the issues as comprehensively as those people can do. And Jim Labrie has a lot of history with the town. If he can make it, that'd be great. So I'm in favor of at least the whole planning board initially, or even going on, even if we divvy up some of the work beyond
Yeah.
that. And over time, there could be a super
Yeah.
committee.
Or identify, based on what the goal is, who the most appropriate person on each of these
Yeah,
committees
exactly.
are to serve
Yeah.
Right.
on that. And then as we move on to something else, would there be someone else who's more capable or whatever, more knowledgeable, I guess?
And in terms of overall communication, while there is housing and some other issues that are not part of the open space and recreation plan, that we've got a parallel process going on right there, because that's being updated and there is some overlap, some of it, in terms of open space and recreation. So, we've got a professional working with us on that. We've got a PVPC person working with us on that process, and that's hopefully going to be finalized by spring. And so you can't ignore that these kinds of big things are happening at the same time.
Well, we should be pulling out things from this and moving them into the open space.
Correct. Open space and recreation.
Right.
Yeah. And just to make an important point here, hold December 18th, which is a week from tomorrow night, as the public visioning for the open space and rec plan, if you could possibly make it.
Have a meeting then.
Well, we can do the best we can, but anyway, try hard to get to that if you can, because it's so critical. You can hear the process going on
What
there.
time does it start?
7? Do we know? Francine, I don't know.
I thought it was, let me look and see if I put
You'll see
anything
a
in my
notice on it.
calendar.
We'll send an email on that, just generally.
Maybe 6:30.
But it's 6:30.
6:30, is it? Okay, so,
Yeah, I mean, and I guess another reason is that it sort of feels like, a lot of the same people are the ones that are always, at the meetings. And it's like, there's more to our committees, in many of these committees, and we need to maybe at least have them get out and put their face out there for a meeting or two anyway, until we can narrow it down. I think it would be good for everybody to share their perspective, if nothing else. So, and that probably won't happen until, I don't know, not until early Feb, or
Yeah.
by the time we do
you're talking about this joint
a
meeting?
joint meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, we've only got 2 meetings in January, right? So for the select board, so.
Yeah, so this will
And we'll be getting ready for a town
Back in
meeting.
February.
It's a town meeting, do we have a date on that?
And
A
yeah,
special
we'll
town
probably figure
meeting?
that out tomorrow, I would imagine. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm coming home a little bit early part of
February.
early February, yeah. That would be,
And that's the special town meeting,
Right.
right?
Right.
so, anyway. So,
Okay.
So next step, group meeting. I mean, is there apprehension about voting for new officers this evening?
Deep sigh.
Yeah.
Everybody's so.
I think everyone's in a similar boat you're in.
Exactly,
That's-
except that we are not going to have a baby in our house in a few months.
It's true.
That's true.
Yes. We could meet at your
That does
house.
kind of,
We could meet at your house.
There we go.
That's it.
Pictures, baby.
Just go over
get off for babysitting and for chairmanship.
I can make a casserole and send it over.
I appreciate that.
I'll even come over and wipe the baby.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a dilemma. It's not something I can do. I'm just kind of like Chris, buried, and I know
Me too.
Cindy,
Yeah.
because we're a lot on the same things. I know you.
I have other things outside of the town that's too, so it's not.
You have a life, is that what you're saying, Jim?
Well, I mean, I have other I volunteer with the church, so there's different, and it's just, we're all busy. It's probably why we're sitting here, because like you said, it's nice, the same people keep coming around.
Maybe we can figure a way that you can still be the chair, but modify it to work for your
Provide some of the
life.
duties.
Or can you delegate some of the
Yeah,
tasks
that's
to
right.
us?
Yeah, I think that's something we can entertain. So Mondays are an issue as well. So
Oh,
Mondays
okay.
are becoming an issue in terms of scheduling as well as Wednesdays.
Okay, so we'll do Sunday mornings or something. Oh, that won't work.
We could do a, go to meeting, Zoom meeting or something.
I mean, that's
Skype it.
I don't have an issue with that. I don't know the board's ability to do that, right? I mean, I know we can do that. There's nothing against the open meeting law that says we can't, as long as we announce ourselves and how we're communicating. You can call in any meeting and participate, so.
That's the public comment, they can call in.
They can, a lot of people text. I mean, it's,
Well, if we did a Tuesday, we just would have to do alternate Tuesdays from select board.
Select board, that's it.
Like that, Wednesdays won't work for me, but Tuesdays are.
Is there other meetings on Tuesdays?
So Hampshire Regional is Monday, right?
Right. The first
Tomorrow.
Monday of
Can't do
every
tomorrow
month.
night. Otherwise, Tuesday.
What day's planning board?
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. Monday.
What's conservation?
Monday.
Concom is Mondays, right? Tuesday might work alternating with select board.
Yes, I have no issue with that, alternating those.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's,
That would work.
I mean, what's on the docket now doesn't seem to be a conflict anywhere. This is Tuesday be the 10th or the 17th would be the next one. Let me just see what's on.
Right.
Are you on January, right?
We have January 7th booked, and, well, that's it.
It's not much
January,
posted
I'm
for-
assuming the next one would be the 21st of January, 7th and the 21st, so.
And I was looking for other Tuesday meetings. I'm
we
not
could
seeing
meet
too
on,
many.
We meet on the 14th.
Do Tuesdays, I would just be a little late because I get out of work at 7
On Tuesdays?
on Tuesdays.
Okay.
We can do 40,
And how far
15.
away
Party
is your
after.
job?
40 minutes,
40. You'd be
Oh.
pretty late.
pretty late.
Really?
Yeah, it's no fun.
So,
You going from Deerfield?
Well, we want you safe. We don't want you
Yes, no.
speeding down.
So then Thursday would be an option? Or no?
I don't have an issue with Thursday.
Thursdays are okay.
Thursdays?
I have Thursdays are good for me too. Okay.
Thursdays, for the most part, are okay. I've scheduled a few other things. I know I'm not available Thursday the 16th. It's like a one-time thing. It's another volunteer thing I do.
The 16th of January?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going on.
Yeah, I wonder.
Okay, so want
The
to go
9th
with
is a
Thursdays.
Thursday?
Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are probably not the nights we're going to meet.
Yeah, I'm away the 2nd.
Yeah. Then start with January 9th.
9th, maybe?
January 9th.
Okay.
We're going to stay with 7? Or
Does that work for you? 7?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that was a preferred time for Christina.
And I know, yeah, and for you too, right?
Yeah, 7's okay. I just do want to make it known that there will be a point where probably won't be here for a while.
Well,
Just to be understood, just so that we're all on the same page. I'm agreeable to continuing today and seeing how it goes, but there may be a point where I yell uncle.
fair enough. They are only little for a short time.
it's true.
When one is 2 and running around like a maniac.
That's part of it. And when you have 2, it feels like 4, by the way.
You might want to come.
What's
You
that?
might want to have weekly meetings.
Yeah, my wife will probably want to come to the meeting.
That's what you can delegate. You can delegate her as the chair.
The vice chair.
Just all the
She might let the night out.
All right, so January 9th, 7 p.m.
Yes.
We can talk about that a little more at the next meeting. We're going to have obviously some time off. I think a lot of the time off between now and then will be just kind of continuing to review the plan. We can talk about that a little more later.
And we could start to work on maybe scheduling
Yeah.
joint meetings.
Joint meeting. Review approved summary of 11/18.
You mean the minutes?
The minutes.
The minutes.
Yes.
So they were sent out,
Yep.
and what you saw was that I just made it 2 parts, including Mike's PowerPoint.
Yeah, so what I did the meeting before is I kind of kept a lot of notes. I didn't save those notes in a file, but a lot of those just got transferred into the PowerPoint per section. So that was the easiest way for me to give you the info.
Good for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that's easily portable. The presentation is also saved on the website for the meeting, in case anyone from the audience,
On the select board?
the My Town Gov.
Oh,
I saved it as an attachment. There's a couple things. I think the master plan I saved that.
Under Master Plan Implementation Committee,
Yeah.
that's where you saved it? Yeah.
Yep, under that section.
Okay.
the one thing we had mentioned on land use, we were going to maybe get rid of the sign bylaw. Did you want to wipe that out now, or just leave it there?
I mean, I'm fine with it going away. I mean, I think it's a great,
It was the very last one on strategy 8.
I think it makes sense. I know some towns, those become almost contentious sometimes when you try to limit that, so of all the tasks and things we have in front of us, that
Wasn't exactly the highest priority, I
no.
don't think.
And you don't know how much effort, sometimes those lower priorities take more effort than some of the bigger ones, so.
Well, the question is, before we start modifying that, do you accept the minutes?
Well, that's part of the minutes,
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
I know, but are we going to change it? 'Cause that
Well, I
was-
don't know, that was my
Right.
question. But yes, I would normally say that the minutes are fine, because basically we've got the PowerPoint as the
As the evidence, yeah.
Right.
evidence of the
Right.
minutes, but
Yeah.
in the meeting even, you mentioned that you might, you thought you were going to cross it off, and we forgot it. So,
Yeah, I thought we, sorry,
Everybody's
talked
getting
about,
it, yeah.
Everybody's getting it.
talked about removing it, and I didn't remove it, I left it in, but,
yeah, but, no, that's all.
yeah,
Okay, either way.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve
Second that.
the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item, we had, sorry. Discuss report out to select board. So we did a report out to the select board a couple weeks ago. I think it went well. There's a lot of information, a lot to digest. I think, unbeknownst to us, our report out hit a lot of these select boards' 2020 goals, or 2019 into 2020 goals, so that was kind
There
of
was some overlap, yes.
that was a good little surprise, knowing that both groups are moving in a similar direction. For those in attendance or that may have watched it, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, constructive criticism?
I wish that the meetings, though, however, and then talking about maybe even as the way we're seated, lend it themselves to more conversation, communication. It's so, with one person standing, and it's kind of an artificial environment for me anyway. And I feel when we sit like this, that they're much more conversant.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity for sharing and responding as opposed to following all the protocols of the meeting.
So some towns do, so I attend petitions and hearings and things in other towns, and some towns, select board meetings are this. Like Worthington, much smaller, but you sit at a round table with everyone and have a conversation about it. It's all recorded and noted,
Yeah.
but it is very, it's easier to have the conversation.
No, that room is, that long table is horrible. I mean, Concom is even
But
worse.
I don't
Yeah.
mean just for when we're meeting, I'm thinking ahead a little bit to when we have joint meetings.
Right.
It's
Oh, yeah.
probably even more important
Yeah,
that we have
no,
a real dialogue as
Yeah.
opposed to a.
I mean, you may need a different
We
environment for that.
present back and forth to one another, but we don't
Senior
really.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Maybe the senior center, maybe it's a spot where you can get tables set up. I don't know. The
There's only two
library,
places.
we gotta be
Well, the
quiet.
library's
but.
not very big. The max for facilitation would be, I mean, it's no bigger than this room.
Right.
I'm sure you've been there a lot of times,
haven't.
Mike. You haven't? You haven't brought your little
It's
guy
a
there?
little
Oh, gosh.
He likes books, but he's really rough on them.
You should go to the Wednesday.
Don't they have like story hours?
Yes,
and stuff?
Wednesdays.
We talk about
It's
it.
fantastic. And
It's really
Johanna, the children's librarian, is out of this world. Hope everybody heard that. She's very good. But no, I don't think that that's an answer. There's only 2 other larger rooms that I know of in their community, unless we hire the country club, the church, or the senior center.
I think you do need it. You need a round table, right?
Yeah.
You need a
Yeah.
table where people are facing each other,
Yeah.
having a conversation and not reporting out to
Right.
Yeah.
to a jury.
No, I think
It
like
becomes-
senior center is actually a better
Yeah.
location, probably just being this.
Well, it's
All right.
municipal, right?
I think the problem is they don't.
Is it
have
under
the
different lock and key?
But they don't have the facility, it is.
It is.
Do you know someone
But they
who
don't
knows
have the
some?
facilities to record or broadcast.
True.
That's true. Neither of those places do. Norris, they do, but they have to bring in
You have to bring it in.
Easthampton
Yeah.
Media for that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about the contract. Maybe that's one of the
Think about
things
that,
that we
yeah.
think about.
Because there is a TV thing in the senior center. Isn't there a screen? for TV?
Yeah,
Oh, they've been there.
Yeah.
Because they, remember, Old Homes Days or whatever
Yes.
they called it. But they were there for that.
I mean, unless, of course, if it's a joint meeting, maybe we would call them in and they would bring,
They could-
move the cameras. I think that's portable.
Yeah.
It's just, their time. So let's shoot for that.
No, I agree. As we get going forward, to really, like I said, to really make an action plan and do some real planning and problem solving, I think this kind of a format is a whole lot better. I think the night of the presentation, I don't know that we could have done any differently, because the presentation
No.
itself was
Right.
over a solid half hour, if not closer to 45
I
minutes,
asked for
probably.
45.
I know.
I know.
30.
And so it was,
I was pushing
it was a
for it.
lot to, for everybody to absorb. And I think, just what Reedy mentioned in terms of some of the priorities that had come up, she had asked us, I don't know, 3 months ago now at least, just to give some first thoughts of some of our priorities. And it was just people kind of brainstorming. It wasn't any real decision of, okay, here's where we are and where we're going forward, because it was really waiting for the master plan's report out to sort of say, okay, well, what mixes? So now that we see that there is some overlap, then I think we can really figure out amongst that, then what is the real priority?
Right.
What can we tackle
Yeah.
first? I mean, what's the most important thing we want to really try and tackle? Because it's still got to be focused and manageable somehow.
And I think it definitely, it's comforting to know that there's sort of similar priorities and direction, because it means the select board will be driving some of the strategies and goals, right? Like you'll be looking, the master plan committee doesn't need to ask the select board to push for this strategy, because you are working on some of those, right? So I think it's helpful, I think there's, and not saying the planning board wouldn't be in favor of anything, but you still have to review and educate and push and lobby and try to move some of those forward, whereas, some of the select board ones are, we already want them on a path, right? I think the town wants them on a certain path, so it's definitely helpful. Any other comments, questions?
I don't know, from the Concom one, I know Concom has always been saying, we want specifics, tell us what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm trying to think of, out of those, remember, I think, which minutes, how many of them touched on Conservation Commission? There was so much that was planning board and other. I'm just trying to think of when we have our next meeting.
She'll want to report.
Next week, what we'll have to say to them, because whether they actually caught up with.
I mean, I think she is what we're looking for is something we can take action on. I'm not sure we're at that point yet.
Right. Let's do that a little bit.
I don't know what's going on with the computer though.
The other thing about that room downstairs in terms of these kinds of presentations,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, that,
the screen's
That
on the
screen
side,
down.
everybody's like twisted around. The
Can't
lights are
see
on,
it.
you can't read it.
I know,
We need a lot of improvement.
So Concom was involved in the Chapter 4 Open Space Natural Resource.
can you make that just a little bit bigger? Sort of semi-blind here.
I will try.
Okay.
Maybe we should pull that section out for the visioning for the,
I can't even read it.
Section 4.
for the,
Yeah.
I can't read it.
the 18th.
That's better.
Water quality campaign, river protection overlay district.
Talk about the, just these issues, not maybe in
I'll
this
pull this out of
format.
this.
This is chapter 4.
Oh, sure.
And this is the one that seems to have the Concom.
You mean for the visioning?
Yeah, see how,
Have you read did you see the,
So the, like,
so the PowerPoint?
The,
Came from Ed on Friday? It shows
I
up
think
on
I did.
Trash. It's already been,
I'm trying to see if I
did you have
got
a
it.
chance
like,
to see
for
it?
example, the 5D, the larger
From
buffer
Emily?
zone.
Yeah.
I think that's something that Marla was talking about, but then again, I think there was hesitancy that would be accepted, wasn't it? I
Right,
mean,
yes. And I think the bylaws would have to be
Right, the bylaws
changed.
have got to be changed, and that's part of the wetlands
Yeah.
bylaw and whatever
Yeah.
else that we're, or whichever, if that all falls under there for the buffer zone, I assume.
November 27th.
I mean, that seems like it could be a priority.
Yeah.
No, this isn't it.
So in terms of some of those that are there, I mean, the open space plan update, okay, that's kind of a given, which is what's happening now. So I think probably that 2A, the prioritized list for open space parcels acquisition, that's really a key thing
Yep.
to, that you can put your hands around
Right.
and do something with,
So this is absolutely listed as one of the priorities that the new open space and recreation plan will be working on.
Yeah.
And so that's like up there with the Greenway and with the,
Right.
I'd love a greenway.
it's, we'll change the subject. But that's really getting,
Do you know anything about like status? Because it'd be,
yes, Paul Fergal came to the,
I spoke to Paul the other day, actually, I should ask him.
you should ask him, because do you want me to, I'm interrupting Chris, go ahead.
Go for it.
So my understanding from Paul is that, there's monies that have been, we already know this from the report that you got previously, there's like $6.6 million that's going to be released 2023 for the Greenway.
And we're targeted for it.
So that-
2023.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 years from now. In the big scope of things, that's like tomorrow, right? How many years have we been waiting for? But the second part is the acquisition of the land. And there's a bill in the legislature about whether or not CPA monies can be used for land. Now, we'll never own the land. It'll
Be
under
purchased.
lease. And so that's kind of where the hat is being hung on that particular point. Excuse my voice, I know I sound
And
terrible.
Lindsay's working on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so basically, things are hanging on the legislature both
Yes.
both ways, whether it's the first acquisition of the rail bank or the railway itself, and then the eventual
Yeah,
construction.
it's consistent with what
Yeah,
you
so it's-
reported several months ago.
Unfortunately, not a whole lot
Nothing
of...
different.
Yeah, not a whole lot of forward movement nothing we can grab onto to, except pressuring the legislators to keep keep it on the front burner.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, out of those, the water quality campaign, I don't know, is that something Concom would, that's probably more the water
Water
commission than
commission, yeah.
Concom. The river protection overlay district, again, probably Concom would do something more with
Yeah.
that than anybody. The buffer zone is one that we've talked about a bit, and we need to just get clarity about how they would want to think about that.
It'd be a local bylaw, right?
Right. Wetlands bylaw that we need to work on. The reduced salt policy, again, I see that a little bit more,
I mean, that comes down to a town policy above
Yeah,
everything else, right? So it's an adoption of
yeah,
application of salt and then storage of salt.
yeah,
and-
so it's kind of highway department too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
tied in there, right. The Baypack thing, good idea, how soon that could even happen. So in terms of, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, because I know going to Concom next week, trying to tell them what it is that, master plan has finally said that they should do. That's going to be the question. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do?
Right.
Okay, that's going to be the question. So out of that bunch, there's only that, developing the, list of parcels that we think would be relevant or best for acquisition. That
They're
would
not
be
going
the
to do
toughest.
that. They're not going to develop a list of parcels.
Well,
It's not going to fall to them. It's going to be open space, I'm afraid.
Well, do we have a
Hopefully they-
list, do we have a list, a
No.
potential list from
No.
the assessor's office?
We never got one, never. I've been trying to find out if there's ever been a draft of any kind.
But just a list
acquired.
of all chapter properties.
Well, there's chapter properties, but then there's
I
also...
know there's other privately owned, yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I wouldn't say that, I mean, Concom may not do this by themselves, but I mean, I would think they would be
Together, yeah.
involved with it. But I mean, out of this list, out of these 6 things here,
Contribute, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, Brittany, you know Concom better than I do, but I mean, that's the only one that jumps out at me that, Concom could start to even.
What about the overlay districts?
Discuss.
Could they be working on that?
I don't know.
Did you learn anything that would be helpful to us?
What I learned, very broadly is that overlay districts are not difficult. They have to be well-defined, well-intentioned, and well-bounded. And if they're that, they're going to stand up to the scrutiny of law or any challenges. So they're really a way to, just exactly as they're described, you overlay. You don't have to rewrite all the existing zoning, which usually takes time. You just
Yeah.
There are often many overlay districts in towns do involve ecological concerns, riverways, et cetera. That's drives most of them. More recently, kind of looking at housing and things. But I'm talking about across the state, as this is presented by these folks at CPTC.
I was gonna say, is there any way I could get a copy of them?
I think you're a trustworthy person. If you're willing to, you can take it and make copies.
Use our work copy.
Yeah.
We can use a copier downstairs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's right. If you want, just on the way out.
Yeah,
you can
down.
move it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is an overlay district.
Sorry?
It was Hadley, wasn't it, that has the overlay district for housing, I think. I found something I forwarded.
There's one in
Oh,
Acton, Massachusetts. I don't know about Hadley. If they do, they weren't mentioned. They were very,
Yeah, okay.
there was a lot of examples given, but not many for housing and none around here. Now, that was just the presenter.
Because I was, okay, I'll have to look at that again. I was looking at something recently and I thought I saw that.
I'd be curious to know if there was something closer.
So I'm betting with Concom, we would probably, it seems like some of what we would be involved in, we would need probably to meet with another committee.
Yeah, when it's logical that
Yeah.
open space and Concom would be the two that work
Yeah.
together. So then
Yeah.
Concom's in here. What's this one?
I think the Concom's mostly, it's kind of ancillary in these. There's not really,
Yeah.
there's not one that stands out. Like, obviously, protect our water supply, yes, but you wouldn't, I don't know what you would do, right? I mean, there's water commission, there's other organizations, there's zoning bylaws and things that help that.
Because we just really get involved if, there's going to be changes like with the new building
Right.
that's going to affect the wetlands.
Right. So I think if you were to talk about an overlay district for some sort of protection, right? I think there'd be involvement and encouragement, but it wouldn't necessarily be something that you take up and vote and drive forward. So, yeah, I think Concom was probably listed by 3rd or 4th down the line in terms of involved parties on these. So.
So eventually they'd be involved with the Greenway too, but that'll be a little bit farther down the line.
Right.
So.
So if we're not meeting, if we're not going to have a super committee review or a joint meeting until maybe February, what do we want our action item for January to be? Because we have to do something over the holidays, right? Can't just celebrate.
Can't just celebrate, no.
I feel like it should be something involved with focusing these so that when we have the joint meeting, there's hey, housing, this is your card. These are your things, right? Conservation Commission, this is your thing. Planning Board, here's your stack, right? But I think just something from a, really looking at it from a committee and what the committee is going to need for effort, I think would be important, right?
Who's going to convene, I mean, who's going to facilitate or be the chairperson and the coordinator of that joint meeting? I know you're very, very capable. Is that something that you see yourself doing? And I ask that because
If you move it into March, I will not.
sometimes I think that an objective professional facilitator is needed, you know, for a whole variety of
Is
reasons.
that something PVPC could help us with, a consultant?
Yeah, the problem is who's going to pay for it.
Right.
That's the big issue. So
But,
here's...
I mean, I don't know if there's money in the town budget for such things, and I only ask that because I think you're exactly right. A professional, you're getting to be a pretty important part of the process
Yes.
here. We're bringing people together.
Yes.
So having the right person to facilitate that can be a time saver, make a big
Yeah.
difference,
Yeah.
and that might be worth paying for.
Right.
What do you think, Chris,
Yeah.
knowing about the sort of the extra funds that are available to the select board? Whatever it's called.
I'm not sure what
That extra
Is there
$2
a
million.
line to that? I didn't know that, Chris. Extra funds available to the select
Is that
board.
free cash?
That's a line on the budget I never
It's
saw.
called free.
Free.
Yeah, it's free. No, free cash is, you can use it for one-time things, right? So, I don't know.
Is that a possibility? I know you were
I
on the
have
finance.
no idea. I have no idea. I mean, for example, the consultant you've had now for open space, I mean, you've got for how,
We don't have
How
one for
long?
open space, you mean planning board.
I'm sorry, planning board, yes.
Wait, well, first of all, there's the open space
You get it.
and recreation plan.
The
and
update
that's a
thing, that's a
PVC
certain
That's a PVPC person.
Right, right.
She's there with DLTA money.
Okay.
District technical assistant, District L technical
Land.
assistance,
Yeah.
Land Technical Assistance Grant?
not land. Local. Local
Oh, yeah.
technical
Yeah, local
assistance.
technics.
And every year, that can be reapplied for. So we have to work with Ed on that. The point that I'm told is, however, that she is not even, there is not even going to be enough for the previous grant of DLTA to pay for the full process of updating the open space and recreation plan. Secondly, the town has a process undergoing, you know this from Ed's report, for the application for the MVP money, Municipal Vulnerability Program money. And they're working with another consulting firm, Fuson O'Neill, for that. And I think that's in stages. And what I understand is the first stage is to apply. And then you assess your needs. And then you can build in various things to assess your needs, which could include possibly something like this.
Right.
Or possibly something like land prioritization for acquisition and conservation. But those are all things that we have to work with Ed, who works with Fuson O'Neill on, from what
Yeah,
I
and that
understand.
kind of, I'm thinking that that's an extended process. I mean, I don't see that as anything quick to have, anybody
said
help
he-
facilitate it.
Sorry.
The facilitating part is probably
No
down the
worries.
road.
Yeah.
Mistake.
The third thing is
I don't
another
see it.
DLTA grant, DTLA Delta grant. And whether that can be reapplied for to get a consultant, and like Emily. The fourth thing is, the planning board has a consultant, and that's Larry Smith, who was formerly with PVPC. However, two things, he's doing it as an independent consultant, and secondly, you okay?
Yeah, just cut myself.
The second thing is he leaves for 3 months.
She bleeds for the organization.
So he's not really available to us. And I think he's really limiting his time with projects. So that's what I know, unless the free cash could be tapped. So we're talking about having a professional person to come and facilitate this joint meeting. Somebody who's not, to be very objective.
I think that's a good idea.
Can the select board consider asking for the free cash for the hiring of that?
Could.
It's a one-time thing?
Or we could
Can
go
we use
to
that cash?
Finance Committee and ask for reserve.
If I was on it, I would say no.
Why would you say, seriously, why would you?
Because it's not.
It's not an emergency.
It's not an emergency.
It's sort of unforeseen, but it's not an
Not
emergency.
really an emergency.
Yeah.
Frequency would be better than.
That's just me though, and I'm not
Yeah.
like anybody.
I don't know what it would cost. I mean, the person would need prep time, and the person would need actual time at the meeting, and the person would need probably post time for creating whatever reports.
Well, I mean, even if we only had somebody to help us out for a couple of meetings, just to get
Yeah.
started, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that would
Yeah.
be helpful.
Is there any, this is a stupid question, is there anybody in town that's good at that, that's not on these committees that would volunteer their time? Stupid.
It's not a stupid question. If we had actually an inventory,
Yeah.
it's hard to get it's a small enough town, maybe
I
you do,
know.
but.
No, we do. I mean, Rainey has a list
Does she?
by occupation of people in town. If we could go through that and see if there would be someone we could identify and then ask them if they would. I mean, that's one way.
I mean, for me, right, the strategies are they're so bylaw heavy that having someone from PVPC seems like it makes sense, right? Because, I mean, they were involved with the plan originally.
True.
There's interaction between them and the planning board today, right, on an ongoing basis. It just, to me, it seems like that should be the facilitator, because you need someone to recognize the bylaw for the groups, to provide guidance on that. And
I'm fairly impressed with this woman, Emily, that's been coming. I think we'd have to bring it to the select board as a request
Right.
and get Ed on board with the whole
It's
story.
true, she's already contracted,
And
and
she
therefore
she's-
familiar, and we're familiar with her. Why reinvent that
She's
wheel?
familiar with Southampton.
Yep.
and I just think she's,
Maybe there could be an addendum to her contract for
Exactly,
X amount of
Well-
time.
right.
you know,
Why make it hard?
But
She's
her
good at
time is covered
facilitating.
under a grant right now. And this means we would come up with the rest of the money.
but you heard me say that she isn't even going to have enough through
Not
the
to
grant.
finish the grant.
But then there could be a renewal of the DLTA.
That's where I was coming in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you think she's also good at facilitating, like a larger group, or?
I've only been at 2 meetings with her, and I think she seems quite capable, but I don't know, what do you think? You've been...
Well, let's see, honestly, let's see how the visioning session
Yeah, that's a
goes.
good
It's a
idea.
good idea.
See how she
Yeah, that
does.
would be a
Yeah.
good
Maybe
idea.
you see someone at the visioning session.
What's that?
See somebody at the vision.
Just put tickets underneath the seat. Whoever gets the right ticket.
Good idea. Everybody reach your win.
Put like a $5 gift card to a coffee shop and a ticket. And we think it's something out of it.
That's true. You know, one thing, way back when we first, or somewhere when we started this, we were talking about going through this, you know, sort of the one time, which we did, and then we talked about we were maybe going to go back and take a look at it through the financial lens, which we never really finally did. Is that something we need to do, or just drop it and keep on moving forward? Remember we talked about we were going to go and rescore some things and see if it was cost effective and blah, 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 or something at one of our meetings?
Yeah, so
I don't know if that's anything that's really worth our time at this point.
Maybe that's part of, as we break this down, like you were saying, each subcommittee take their area of expertise and
maybe they can cost the
research what,
efforts.
that could be part of it too, is,
Yeah.
it almost sounds like, you're asking for a refinement of prioritization and can include finances as part of that.
Well, feasibility and what that means. That means financially, it means, fairly readily achievable. Still on everybody's radar screen. I mean, there's a lot of factors, and all of which we went through when we did that analysis.
But I think what we want to avoid is everybody saying, well, it's too costly, we can't do it, and then then nothing happens, right? So you don't
Well,
want to,
I know, and then you
you don't
give up
wanna
on
go
very
like
important things.
Like a
You're right.
wastewater treatment
Yeah,
plant
you're
for
right.
multiple
You're
million.
you know, you end up kind of inviting some of the naysayers too, though, so I don't know
Okay,
what makes
I'll
sense.
take it back then.
No, I mean, no, I'm one that sort of opened that can of worms there, but it's something we had mentioned at one point of, as we were going through the Smarty goals, that we might have to do a second pass on things, but,
If it's
I don't
gonna
know if we-
cost money, you can't avoid that.
yeah. But I don't know if we know enough, without sort of the bigger group, I don't know
I couldn't cost
if
it.
we ourselves would have a clue about how to really even apply that,
Right.
criteria. Is there is there any way that we would want to take in order to help move the first public meeting or first group meeting forward to further look at, just say the chapters and say, okay, out of these things, master plan's recommendation is that we start with whatever, economic development, for example, but that's, if we rank the chapters in terms of any use, does that help us at all?
Rather than simply going in the order that they're
Yeah.
listed.
Does that help us help the select board or anybody else?
I mean, I think it obviously narrows down the scope, right? Of first steps.
I don't know. 'Cause I think still with the chapters, we've got, half a dozen things under every chapter, so we've still got, whatever, 30 to 40 possible strategies here, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is you look at a chapter and it's months worth of work, right? No matter what.
sure.
Even if it's an easy strategy, it's still months worth of work with the way meetings are, so.
Before we did that, I'm wondering if that would come out of the joint meeting.
Yeah, it might.
It wouldn't be up to us. I kind of feel like we're a little bit at brain drain at this time, this committee, just because we've been working with this for a while and we know that we have to get other people involved.
Well, and that may be where this idea of a consultant to help us do that would be these.
I really think that we're volunteers, we come from very different backgrounds. We're committed, we're working hard, but I think we need somebody to help us focus this.
Yeah. I would agree.
It's kind of the strategic plan, steps, going forward in a way. It's like taking this, it's like, okay, what's the strategic plan now? How do we make it actionable?
Exactly. A lot of money went into writing the original master plan. A lot of money has gone into a lot of things for our town that haven't been carried forward, haven't been actuated.
Like the DPW study 30 years ago, something like that.
Many
Yes.
things. So if anything, I would be in favor of some kind of action that may take spending some money to get things rolling and not just, oh, by the way, have you done that, in 5 more years and 10 more years.
No, I don't disagree with you. Isn't there any grants or anything like that that would fund something like this?
Well,
I
mean, the whole thing about grants, to fund them,
know.
is you gotta find the grant, you gotta apply for the grant, you
It's
gotta win the
appropriate,
grant.
I know. But, jeez,
How,
I'm just wondering.
so are you?
Lindsay has office hours. One of us, maybe she can put us in touch with somebody to talk to. Lindsay Sabadosa.
I know who you
Just
mean,
to see.
To get money?
Well, to see
I
if
think we should-
they could hook us.
They always come to you for money.
No,
Let's
if
go
she
for
could,
them.
no, if there's, on her staff, they can identify the state agency that we might go
Right, it
to.
may not be a grant, but State Office of Economic Opportunity or something, maybe there's
There may be
assistance.
something out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
What does our
there's-
town administrator have to say? Does he have any resources or knowledge about what might be available to us for that kind of thing? I mean, do we need to be very
Well,
clear that this is a need?
Yeah, I think one of the, that's another thing, something that's missing on almost every committee is an attachment to town hall. Like an employee who sits in on these,
Yeah.
who's in the appropriate department.
We need a planning department.
Because, we're all, like I said, we're all volunteers. The mix of people change over time, and there's not really a constant. And, well, anyway.
So for next meeting,
Yes. Thank you.
what do we want to talk about at the next meeting? What do we want to look at? I feel like we should focus on what's in front of us. I don't think we should look at anything else in the book, right? Because there's enough in front of us today.
It's all the redundancies are out.
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
I think there's some overlap, but it's still different enough.
Okay.
I mean, because either way, we're going to have to continue moving forward, we're going to have to meet in February. Whether we have someone or not, we still need to meet. We still need to try to make progress. So making sure we refine this the best we can to review it. And when I say refine, I honestly don't at all mean add anything. I think if anything, it means maybe reducing.
Yes.
Crossing some off,
I agree.
tabling some for a future date, tabling some that may just take 2 years to do. Right? Just so that when we do start, we can move forward in February with or without professional assistance.
So is the idea that we might pick like 2 things out of each chapter, something like that, is our highlighted?
I don't know if I want to limit us to picking,
Yeah.
but I think we should really look closely at each strategy and say, you know what, that sign by law, let's table that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to say the scenic byway, because one, I think some of those are easy, right? Like signage for scenic byways are easy, and they're easy ways to make progress, and we did originally address them. But on the same note, is it something the master plan implementation committee has to concentrate on, or is it something that another committee can just do? So that's my thoughts. Continue to update the town's open space and recreation plan. I mean, that one's here just because we know it's important, but it's working, right?
It's going on.
It's happening right
Yeah.
now, so it's,
Yes.
I mean,
So it's being done.
That's a done deal.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I almost have mixed feelings about this, because, I mean, we could go through each chapter again and prioritize in each chapter. But I feel like we've kind of done that already.
Yeah, I thought this was in the order which
It is.
And it-
Yeah.
we voted, and I don't know if things have changed.
No.
I mean, I think,
It might be a good exercise to do this with the other parties to see whether or not their priorities and our priorities line up.
I think it's too much to review as a large group.
I do too.
I think the bullet points, there's too many lines to review with a group of more than like 6, 7, 8 people.
So what?
Not only that, but I'm sorry.
No, I interrupted. Go
No,
ahead,
I
Jim.
think you would.
Go ahead.
I would also say that these aren't really our priorities. We interpreted the master plan. So how many times do we need a bigger group to reinterpret the master plan?
Yeah.
I think we're ready to move ahead. We have the priorities. Like we have to tweak them, refine them a little bit. As far as maybe near-term, long-term, that's a way to look at it. But
And these can all be highlighted again back in the rubric, right, with the short, medium, and long-term, and the party, right? So they can always be brought back to their original format, so you see
Yeah.
what they look like.
Jump up to it, like economic development or some other one, just to get our head around something else here.
Just a nice short one here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But I mean, maybe, do we think instead of paring down the list that we do, we go into that, we'll say the February meeting, right? The February big meeting of, we need to pick a chapter, we need to focus on it. Because I don't know how you can touch each chapter effectively.
I agree, all at the same time.
Maybe that becomes the larger group's decision.
But I still come back to sharing and getting some sense of how they would, these other collaborating committees, how they would line up with our thinking in terms of priorities. Because they have to be something that, we're not in a position to say this is what we're going to do, especially if we need their cooperation in order to do it. So that's where I see trying to get some,
True, we're merely interpreting the MPI. The
Right.
MPI wasn't necessarily, the Constitution, you must do it,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, to your point,
yes.
right, we're helping to present the MPI to them and get their thoughts. Because obviously these different boards have to be on board. If it doesn't work for them, it doesn't make sense to them, it doesn't matter what we or the NPI says.
Well, that becomes the issue. And I'm just wondering if each of us could take one of these committees with this little package and go to one of their meetings initially. Does that make sense?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
And talk to them about it. And on that level, a small group, multiple small groups, have that discussion,
Go through
come
the-
back with something and see where we are. I
Go
don't
through the whole
know.
presentation with them?
No.
No.
Each chapter, so,
Yeah, each,
of course, where would this,
Everyone's overlapping though.
yeah.
are they
that's the
all in
problem.
every, I mean, the highway department isn't in everyone,
No,
but I'm sure
planning board
planning
basically
and
is.
select board are, and select board already got it.
So I've already done that with the planning board.
Okay.
I pulled out critical things that from this very list and discussed it at length with the planning board and got some feedback. It has to keep going. But I don't think that would be a good exercise with the planning board right now.
No, but I'm looking and I see, well, the highway department, but you had Conservation Commission, you had some others up there that were kind of strays in there that,
Right, some are easier than others. I
Yes.
certainly brought it back to the Housing Authority
I
in
do
the first
believe
chapter.
the next
All right.
step is the joint meeting.
Okay.
And that if anything, we could, even now or in the January meeting, see if we could eliminate anything off the list. We could just plain say, we've got to pare this down a little bit. That's, I think, where we should be thinking about going. Not to
So
say they
before
are-
we go in February, we just really pare it down.
Yeah.
And then I think if we're, for the joint meeting, we really have to clear objective. What are we doing here? We're getting together, we're looking at this list, and what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Without a clear direction.
Because
Trying to complete these strategies.
Yeah, it's going to, look at how much talking we've done in this meeting. We have thoughts, we have questions, we have history, we have personal opinions on things. That is going to happen in the joint meeting too, because everybody's going to have something to, hopefully, to say. That's the whole point of it.
I guess when we were sort of saying some of the same things, but then if we spend our time, knocking this one down to whatever, 3 or 4 of them, we risk, because of our own viewpoints, pushing aside something that might be somebody in a different committee that isn't so close to this as we are, might say, well, what did you get rid of that for? That's important, I think, as the foundation of how you build a strategic plan.
We were appointed the implementation committee. We have to prioritize. I mean, at some point, it does come
Yeah.
down to,
But we, like
Cracking
Jim
eggs
said,
to
we
make omelets,
prioritize,
right?
we prioritize. I mean, how much more?
What if we were to put kind of, like where you were saying, going in front of each of the committees on maybe a smaller scale, just getting their input on, for these listed items, what would you need or what would your next steps be? I guess, I don't know. What would you need in order to accomplish this goal? What would your next step be and how could we help? I don't know. Just to get some direction. I kind of feel like personally, like we're just, and as a horse person, I hate to say this, but I kind of feel like we're beating a dead horse. Because I know that probably is, how Concom will think is, we can look at the priorities, but, I think there's several things we would need either that we could be a part of or other committees, like the bylaws, other things have to happen before we can even
Right.
do anything.
So I guess, is there 1 or 2 of these chapters that are really
sequentially.
sort of the foundation that you gotta do this in order to then allow for other things to happen. And it sort of feels
It's a
like,
fair question.
you know, it's a lot of this, I'm forgetting one, it was one housing, what was number one? I'm sorry.
Housing.
Was housing. So, I mean, this one again is talking about, you know, the sort of this, you know, the growth in town, and it's got, you know, the water treatment, it's got the fiber optic stuff in here, infrastructure zoning. This kind of feels like a,
Yeah.
you know, the big monster on the wall here compared to some of the others.
Yeah.
That in many ways we can't,
Certainly, some are dependent on others and some are not. You're
Right.
right. That's a good point. You could
you know,
start
some of
with.
these we can't move too far forward unless we get some of the other things done. And to the extent planning board is involved in a lot of this, and they are already working on the bylaws, then that's, you know, that may be.
Sorry, I was just reading.
No, that's a good point.
I mean, I don't-
Chris, I think that,
Is it-
that some of these need to happen sooner than later. And do create foundation possibilities for other things to be built off of.
Because we could be coming at it from all sorts of angles, but if you don't have something to anchor it to, we could just be spinning our wheels, you know, so even, yeah, so like in housing, so for example, so the cluster bylaw, I mean, these seem to be, you know, definition of elderly housing. I mean, these seem to be things that you can put your hands around a little bit. I mean, they're not amorphous like some of these others are, a little bit.
Yeah. But they also do not seem so dependent on other
True.
things.
No, housing is, I think it is its own chapter. All the others, they sort of move back and forth between each other, but housing's pretty, it is pretty defined.
And we do have the inclusionary zoning bylaw, right? Don't we?
Yes,
We've already got that.
yes, we have it.
So
And
why
the
did
problem is it can't be, it's not followed.
But we said adopt it. We've already adopted it.
Adopt a zoning bylaw, such as a new inclusionary bylaw.
It's not, it's, the one we have is,
The one we have is broken. Fix it.
never
right?
worked. Never worked because of the way it
Not
works.
necessarily that it's not followed,
Okay.
it's not adequate, or
Okay.
it's not producing the results as intended.
Right.
right.
Okay.
So,
Well, so I mean,
But maybe it's a pie in the sky one, but I just thought it was good to,
yeah, I don't know. Well, so maybe chapters 1 and chapter 2 are the, you know, maybe we're just happening to go in order. I don't know. Those are the ones that,
I mean, I think they're good, chapter 1 and 2, from my opinion, because I think we have other parties actively working. Chapter 3, chapter 4,
this
mobility
sidewalk
maybe.
system of the Greenway were
Yeah.
kind of behind this anyway.
Right, but I think from some of the open space, the recreation committees, there are groups actively working those. 1 and 2 probably require more directed attention. Public services. You know, I think once you get into adding like putting 3 or 4 chapters in front of yourselves to implement, I think that's where
Yeah.
I personally get lost. Like, I think, all right, so we're going to do 1 and 2, and then we're going to talk about, actually, a lot of these are with the Water Commission, too, so
Yeah.
they're actively working those. Decrease reliance of school choice revenue. I mean, it's an ongoing budget thing, right? It's always going to be a conversation every year.
It's gone. They've wiped them out.
They worked out well.
School choice funds. They use it almost all, no.
It's gone. And plus that people are not choosing Southampton anymore.
No. What I'm saying is that the school is having to
utilize
use their
those
school
funds.
choice funds to run the school, as
Oh.
opposed to it being kind of like a piggy bank
Oh.
that would allow them to do enhancements. I mean, that's how bad it is.
And, yeah, energy.
the state's new laws for appropriations for schools, is that going to benefit the town, or?
What do we here. Was it
Just reading the city of Northampton doesn't see a lot of
something?
benefit, but-
I think because the income level in Southampton being what it
Right, it's
is.
really driving toward poorer school
Yeah.
Right,
districts.
so I think we're getting, why $57,000
Yeah.
more sticks in my head, I don't know.
I think that, poor school district.
Rural and poorer, yeah.
But for example,
Urban.
just sort of jumping off, maybe we should recommend to restart an energy committee where we
Yes.
never find members for
Yes.
it.
Right.
Want to be on another planning
No, I agree.
We have a volunteer. No, it is true, because I mean, realistically, Chapter 7 is something you could hand off to a separate energy.
It's kind of its own little baby compared to, it's really not, that requires some research and, other towns, what's happened and,
I
lots of
do
stuff.
have the name of someone that someone gave me who's a Southampton resident who does all this,
Oh, really?
this, not the cable stuff, but what are we talking about?
Public
Broadband.
utilities.
Utilities?
Yes.
Or broadband?
And has all of Amherst or something like that.
person
Project. So, I mean, he
volunteer
would
their
be,
time here?
I don't know, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
at least we know, at least we have a name of somebody, and hopefully
Yeah, that's good.
they might be interested because they live here.
Right.
But in terms of, this one being kind of divorced from anything else that's going on, in terms of other committees and so forth,
I think we've always felt that about Chapter 7, too.
we might want to suggest that there is a new mini group that anybody who's interested in solar or, these kinds of renewable energy kind of
Yes.
stuff to maybe
Yes,
encourage a new committee to form.
I like that.
Mhm.
What was it, 8? Sorry, while we're at it.
Land use.
That's cluster, so that's again bylaw stuff. Is this something that open space is picking up, Cindy?
Which one's that?
Land use ones? Cluster zoning,
No.
or planning board, anybody? No?
The Open Space is not doing 2A.
I meant planning board, sorry.
Oh, planning board.
I said open space, I meant planning board. Sorry. I still don't
I
understand
don't
2C
think-
myself. but-
Update existing cluster zoning regulations to make the regulations more present. Specifically eliminate minimum tract size and consider allowing cluster developments by right. There has been a lot of discussion about that. I think I have to be honest, this is where my knowledge is limited. And the pros and cons of that particular, changing it was brought up. I'm going to have to go back and, anybody want to go to the review? It's Wednesday night. We're going to have it all over again. We're going to do it. I can ask again.
And I still don't quite
I
understand
don't
2C
think
though.
2C,
It's just,
that is actually counterproductive.
it's counterintuitive to me. I mean,
Yes,
it doesn't make any
it
sense
is.
to me.
It doesn't make any sense.
Why would we want bigger minimum lots?
That's exactly
Well,
what their
it's
point
the
is.
rural residential, so to kind of preserve an open space,
Okay.
Yeah.
you have larger properties. So that's where the different zonings
Yeah.
make a difference.
Okay.
So
You-
what do
some of
they do
our-
with existing properties that don't meet that criteria?
Oh, they're good.
I know they're grandfathered in, but I mean,
What do you mean?
What, is a house on it? Then it's fine.
It's fine if it's a...
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Do you realize we have something like, we were reading this, we have like 44 non-conforming businesses in our town?
I
Probably.
didn't even know we had 44 businesses.
In the residential areas. Like people that cut hair, or people that do dress alterations.
Psychics.
Or people that, what's that?
Psychics.
Psychics.
As opposed to sidekicks.
I don't know who, but those are just occurring to me, that those might be businesses.
there was like 130 something.
So they're like home businesses, so they're not zoned commercial at all, they're
No,
home businesses.
they're not
They're
conforming.
residential businesses.
They're in the open, where was I reading that? In the open space and recreation plan. I was reading that. So there's lots of things that don't conform in our town. That's one example.
Yeah.
So if you can't tell somebody that they don't have the right size footage for their housing if they lived in that house for so many years.
So of course, right.
Yeah.
It's all about when you're
No,
applying for
you
a
know,
new,
I-
The other side, some of you know that I just got back from Paris. That's where I got this cold. And I was just amazed at how people in other countries, like you're from a different continent, we are amazed about just living in the Western world compared to what you've experienced in Africa. But in European countries, they live together closely, and then they preserve their open spaces so differently than we do in our country. And people are used to it, and people are used to living close together. And then they go out to
Yeah,
the
here,
countryside.
everybody has to have their
Exactly.
own. As
Well, because
opposed
we
to-
work so much, we don't get much time off. You
They-
need to enjoy your recreation on Saturday and
Well.
Sunday. You know.
It's in
Yeah.
Great Britain, beautiful open spaces, and yet really small houses that are really close together. Row houses, you know, they just, we don't have those.
I would love to see more tiny houses.
There was,
Yes.
yeah, something happened, I think it was, there was a meeting in Westhampton this week, I was trying to get to it, and I didn't.
There's no
It was about tiny
limitation
houses.
on tiny houses. What there is limitation on lot sizes. That's the difference. It's not, you can build the tiniest house you want on your lot.
So one of the things they talk about in the overlay is you can allow for more, like in-law apartments. With an overlay district, you can allow for a tiny house built in the backyard. And so that creates
If it
more
conforms-
affordable options.
Yeah, if it conforms to these sewer requirements.
Well, that's just it, right? You
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah, help in
that's
the
where
implementation.
not having infrastructure like sewer, and so you're relying on septic, creates a bit of a challenge. Of course, you're talking, a tiny house is tiny, you only have so many, your volume,
Yeah.
and I don't know, Title V, I don't know if that minimum volume would allow you to just tie into the existing septic.
It's probably considered
Given
an
the
additional
limited.
bedroom.
I'm sorry?
It's probably considered an additional bedroom. So if
Right.
they're only sized for like a 2-bedroom home, and if 3 is the extra, the next tank up, the next size up,
Right.
you probably can't.
So I think that makes sense. So whether it's an in-law or a tiny home, it's all about the bedrooms that
Right.
you've been, yeah.
Well, anyway, with all of this, I think, personally, chapters 1 and 2 are the two big ones to try and tackle. So whether we try and say, hey, look, let's try to focus the joint meeting on those.
And just not do the other, and do another joint
Well-
meeting 6 months later, maybe?
Maybe.
You may have.
See how it goes.
See how it
See
goes.
how it's gonna
Get
fit.
something started- Get something started. I mean,
That's a good idea.
8 of them is way too many. And out of everything that's here, the real meat of what we're trying to do, if we're trying to, and I keep going back to building a foundation
Can you go
to
back to the
build a
table of
strategic plan
contents?
upon, it's got to be, you know, this, I mean, economic development may be kind of the weird name for it. I'm not sure that's really the right name for the chapter, but it is. So between that and the housing seem to be the two, because open space is already happening. I mean, you know, not to
Right.
say, not to minimize that,
I
but
like
that's,
that idea.
that's
I
kind
like
of
that
separate
idea.
by
And
itself.
and the other thing is, maybe we could reprioritize these chapters. I mean, you picked 1 and 2 because 1 and 2 are the most important. But as I look down that list, I would look at public services and energy as my
Facilities.
second, as 3 and 4, as opposed to,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
In the order in which we address them, if we're going to go that way, which is a good
I
idea.
mean, they just seem like those are the ones that have got the most to do within them.
Right.
That's going to take.
Yeah, you certainly-
If we made headway in either one of those, I think
Right.
we'd be really moving.
Can you?
Right, and it would be a good litmus to see, wow, let's keep going.
Can we do it?
Or that was a disaster. We need to think of another way to attack the rest of these chapters.
Right. You know,
Yeah, I think so.
but I think if we,
that's a good
I kind of feel like we should tackle the hardest ones first. Otherwise, I think, you know, we'll never get to them. Well, if we tackle the easiest one, then we'll never get to doing these, and we'll be right where we are.
And
I like
we can't meet for, 8 hours. It just will lose everybody, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's available for 8 hours.
No, but I mean, you know, I think,
Let's do that. Let's,
you know, and maybe whenever
But-
we have our, yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry, I
No,
interrupted you.
no, go. You had a moment.
I did. It's a dim bulb, but it went off.
hold on. I need my sunglasses. Go ahead.
No, you don't. You said, yeah, we can't meet for 8 hours because we can lose them. That's true, but if you if you met on a Saturday and you included a lunch, even if something as informal as a potluck, you might have more energy around, kind of like you go away for a conference or something like that. You build a certain energy.
Yeah.
When you try to do it in the evenings, I don't know about you, I'm an old man. I'm tired at this time.
I'm
of
older
night.
than you are, and I'm tired.
You know, it's hard to, but I know Saturdays, hey, that's my Saturday, it's my weekend, right? But, you know, if you plan it in advance enough, you bring us perhaps a certain energy. And maybe that's not the first one you have, but if the first one goes really, really well and people are psyched, maybe the first one is just like a very broad, this is what we need to do, get people energized, and then you propose a Saturday 2-hour or something.
Yeah, sure, it's fine.
So the only issue with Saturdays is it is recommended
Or something.
that all public meetings happen on days in which town hall or city hall is open, especially if you're going to have quorums of committees. It's I don't know if it's attorney general recommendation, but it's something that does unfortunately limit our ability to do some of those things. It sounds great and it sounds like it should be something we can do, but because open meeting law requires everything to be formal and documented, it does hinder that. But maybe an early dinner is something too, right? A 5 o'clock
Right.
meeting on a day, or
Or is it possible that, you know, what are the provisions for opening town hall for a Saturday? Is that it's open?
yeah. We get the
It's
senior
one of those
center
bylaws
key.
we're still writing. Use of public buildings. And public assembly.
No, but to your point too, it could
Yeah.
be, you could start earlier.
Just because
Feed them, they will come.
Yeah.
Even if it's just pizza, but I mean,
Yeah. No, it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, just feels
But
like,
we're not going to get in every single person. I'm just thinking of the planning board, and
sure. Well, people that are working, right?
2 of the people have full-time jobs, and I think more than 2 do. But I'm just not entirely sure how full-time is for 2 of the others. And that's why I do all these other little committee things, because I don't have a full-time job, although I think I do.
Now you do.
No,
yeah, exactly. So now you do.
No,
I'm
I
looking
am.
to retire again.
Yes, I'd like
My
to
second
retire
one,
again too.
yes.
Well, that's another topic. But whether you try one early evening with, God forbid, pizza or something, and another one on a Saturday, that's fine. We can try it.
I think if you're going to try to really tackle something in the first one, then maybe the best strategy is to start when people expect these things to happen, which is an evening.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an
I think
earlier
so.
evening with some food.
Yeah.
And then part of the objective is, how did this go?
Yeah.
Would you rather really get some steam
Right.
going and meet on a Saturday? Or do you like this format?
That's the answer. I'm really in favor of what Chris just said with going only on chapter 1 and 2.
Like-
And not saying the others aren't good, just saying we're going to do this in a stepped process. How's that sound?
I like it.
Yeah.
Because we can't go into so many directions at the same time, then nothing gets done.
You're more focused.
So do we want January meeting to be just about kind of reviewing chapters 1 and 2 and our strategies, just as kind of a follow-up before the joint meeting?
I have a proposal on that. What do you think about just bringing in the planning board for the first meeting, even in January?
Sure.
And not doing
Since
everybody
they're
else?
so involved with,
And then I'm concerned that they may be clipping off some of these things
Okay.
because of what they've done before and I did present some of that to us already. And if we could get at least a couple of the planning board fellows in on this, I think that would be helpful and maybe help us to sort of shave or alter or rewrite or whatever we need to do on these priorities for January. How do people feel?
like they may have some history and they
Yeah,
can steer you.
definitely.
I'm good with that.
Definitely.
Well, and, you
If
know.
we can get Paul Fergal,
There-
Paul Demon minimally in on this, that would be great.
Okay. For the January meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, if we could find the.
And would they be able to, I mean, is it worthwhile to find out what bylaws they're working on? Or-
Well,
or
I know
you
what bylaws
that?
we're working on, all the zoning bylaws.
Yeah. But I mean, that's like a 75-page document the last time I
Yeah,
looked at it.
it is. We've got the, what's his name, Ryan Gallagher coming, as well as Jerry
From zoning.
Swanson from zoning, that they're coming to the bylaw review at this point. I just think that'd be helpful. Keith Locke was on the original planning board. I mean, master plan, wasn't he? Wasn't he listed on the original? And he's also on the,
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, he is. He was
We're seeing the
originally
planning
on
board's
here.
fingers in all of this.
yeah. So start there. I mean, you'll be there from housing to talk about this, and then think about next steps from there.
I like
Do
it.
And so on. Just talk about chapters 1 and 2. That's all.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm not sure they'll come, but we can try. I'll bring food.
So that would be for the 9th, yeah? And then, but we still want to schedule
The joint.
some sort of joint meeting with the
Yeah.
select board.
Yeah,
End of February, yeah.
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 And is another action item for us is just to explore the facilitator possibility for February? Should we start
Sure.
that now? or-
It wouldn't hurt. We knew how to go about that with,
Is
has
it
Lindsay
just-
got office hours coming up anytime?
What?
Lindsay, did she got hours coming?
Yes, she
anytime?
does. Let me look at these.
See if she would have anybody that she might, or any resource she could give us.
Yeah, she,
She's on the 9th, well, today? She was here? No,
well, someone on her staff is. Let me just look.
well, that was already today.
She comes, whoever it is comes once a month.
Yeah, okay.
What timing is it?
January 13th,
Okay. Well,
so that's after we meet. So,
That's right.
I mean, I think we'll just have to keep moving forward. I don't know any other way than, you know, we'll plan to meet in January, and then we'll plan to meet in February, and we'll
yeah.
see what we have by the time we get there. And
Yeah.
if people explore their options and
Yeah.
explore what we have for
Well,
resources.
and I'm thinking too, you know, as we look at 1 and 2, I mean, there were some bylaws type things mentioned in 1, there were some bylaws in 2, so maybe we stop making this sort of artificial chapter boundary and we cross-link it. So, you know, here's out of these 6 things in housing and 8 things in economic development, you know, here's 5 that are all bylaw related. Here's others that are definition related. Here's others that are whatever they were. You know, sort of, you know what I mean, sort of cross-reference, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Everything that's listed in 1 and 2, so that we're not just confining ourselves, well, we're going to do chapter 1 and chapter 2. We're going to do
Right.
subject matter, not
right.
chapter matter.
But
We're
content as opposed to.
limiting it to chapters 1 and 2.
That's right, but-
Cross-looking it.
but not-
Cutting the cake a different way.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we have a bylaws sections, we have a policies section. we
Yes,
have a
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hang a sign section.
Yes.
Do you want to do that next meeting?
Well, that might be.
And
I
not
mean,
do the
that-
planning board, invite the planning board
well, I
to
don't know. I mean,
February?
that's just an idea. But
I think we
Or
could
can
probably
you-
do both.
You
Yeah, I
can-
was thinking.
You can,
Yeah,
Because
because
they may have some
I can
thoughts on
parse
this
them
as
up
well.
by what the intent is, right? If it's policy, if it's bylaw, if
you know, because there was the one that, you know, definition of elderly housing and-
Right.
or affordable housing or whatever
Yeah.
it was. and-
So like an like definition
Yeah.
of elderly housing, that's an administrative
Yeah, so administrative kind of
strategy,
stuff.
right? It's not necessarily, you don't
Yeah.
need a town vote for
Or
that.
the, you know, the housing trust thing, so, you know, administrative, research, bylaw, something.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like categories of things rather than sticking to chapters.
Yep, I can put that together.
Do you see what I mean?
that sounds
Does that
good.
make any
And
sense?
it'd still be good to have
Does,
the
it
planning
makes
board
good
there.
sense.
I like it. Good.
All right,
With that,
definitely brain dead.
Yes,
schedule our next meeting, which we did. Is there any other minutes or any other items?
Well, the question is, am I inviting the planning board or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Cordially.
No, invite them rudely.
Well,
Come now or forever hold your peace.
they're gonna, I'm gonna be there this week,
Okay.
so I'll mention it, speak of it.
Any other items? With that,
Anybody
I'll-
want a cold?
No.
Oh, there you go.
I've been, I got one dealing with one for months now.
with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
second. Aye.
Hey.
Aye.
Yeah.